Okay, next up we have Elementos. Elementos trades under the ASX code ELT with a market capitalization around 30 million. Elementos is committed to the safe and environmentally conscious exploration, development and production of its high-grade tin projects. Elementos owns two world-class tin projects with large mineral resource bases and significant exploration potential in mining-friendly jurisdictions. Presenting for the company today, we have Elementos MD Joe David. Joe, welcome back, and please take it away.
G'day, Paul. Pleasure to be back with you today in the Share Cafe audience. If you guys just flick forward a couple of slides, this is a presentation which we released onto the stock exchange last week, but there's obviously the usual disclosure documents at the front. What I'd just like to touch on first is where our company is going and the momentum we're currently building. So as of last week, we announced the market that our flagship project in the south of Spain, in Andalusia, is back on track in terms of its regulatory pathway with the government. And we've got a very clear development pathway forward, which puts us in a position to have the primary approvals for the project in hand by the end of next year. As aligned with that, we've restarted our definitive feasibility study, and we're forecasting to complete the feasibility study by the end of this year, which will be great for our shareholders. So that's to do with our Oropesa project in Spain, and then we have our other asset in Tasmania, which is an old historic tin mine that we're currently drilling out. It's already got a large resource, tin and copper there, but we're drilling it not only for tin and copper, but a very large looking tungsten resource that we have at depth, which we want to define further. The tin market is absolutely hammering right now. For anyone that follows commodities and base metals, you'll know that tin has been the number one performer in that time. We're up about 42% so far this year. And in April, we went as high as about $35,000 on the London Metals Exchange. All our technical studies have been done at about a price of 30,000. So substantially above what we require and will be the basis of our feasibility studies, our project. And then I was just last week at the International Tin Association conference up in Malaysia, and it was reiterated over and over there with the entire industry in place that there is not enough tin. Tin has been underinvested for about 30 years. Tin is the critical element in solder, which means it's critical in every single electronic application. There is not enough. There's substantial deficits forecast, which I'll go into in the forthcoming slides. So next slide, please. So just quickly, I've touched on a few of these things. We have two assets. Our flagship asset is in Andalusia in the south of Spain, which is a very major mining region with very large copper mines and very pro-mining. We've got a 20 million tonne resource there. Of 95% of that's already seeded and measured and indicated. The heavy technical work has been done there, and we're moving through, as I said, to the final stages of permitting and completing the definitive feasibility study. So the heavy costs of acquiring the data have been achieved. Also, our Tasmanian project, we have the drill rig running down there right now, spinning as we speak, and certainly looking to further define not only the 7.5 million tonnes of tin and copper that we already have in the resource, but get down into the tungsten, of which we have 4 million tonnes already defined, and a 15 to 24 million tonne exploration target, which when we intersect that, we should turn this project into a very substantial global tungsten project, as well as it already is on the tin copper side. Next slide, please. So I don't expect everyone on the call to be au fait with tin, but tin is a very critical mineral. It is classified as critical or strategic by nearly every major economy around the world, and certainly by a number of them that are chasing critical minerals in a very progressive and pragmatic way. There is no tin supply in North America. There is no or very, very little tin supply in Europe, where our major project is, as well as a lot of the major tech hubs around the world. Next slide, please. What is tin used for? Tin is used for everything important in the world. The electrification story, anything to do with automation, anything to do with electric cars. tin is going to play a role. Tin is the critical electrical contact in solder. It makes up about 95% of all global solders since lead was removed about 10 years ago, and will continue to play this critical role. It is not substitute, it has no substitutes at the moment, and based on the small quantity that is in each electrical circuit, it really is inelastic. Demand is inelastic to price, and it looks like the demand for tin will continue to grow even when the price increases. Next slide, please. Talking about the price increase, and previously referenced, we've gone up about 42% as the deficits really start to hit. This is both a supply and demand story. The historic supplies of tin are running out. There's major supply issues from the second and third major producers, being Myanmar and Indonesia, as well as demand is kicking for the reasons I've previously spoken about. Semiconductor sales are starting to rip. And in addition to that, everything electronic uses tin, and clearly that is a growing market. Next slide, please. So critically, I'll fly through these slides here, but you see on the slide on the left there, there is very little tin supply in Australia, virtually none in Europe, and the other one missing is there is absolutely nothing in North America. So critical economies, major global economies need their supply of tin, and we plan on playing a critical role in that. The chart on the right just shows that the major suppliers over the last 30 years are also dropping off, and there's major supply issues in the historic supply industry. So demand's going up, supply's dropping away, and there's no supply in the two regions of which our two projects currently reside. Next slide, please. Again, this is just a data from the International Tin Association, which really highlights this 30 to 50,000 tonne deficit that is presenting itself by 2030. And in addition to that, just for reference, the current size of the current tin market is about 360,000 tonnes. So 40,000 tonnes missing out of 400,000 tonnes by the end of this decade is quite substantial. So new projects like ours are required, and we're very certain the tin price will continue to increase to support bringing on new projects. Next slide, please. So getting into our projects, our major project is the Oropesa tin project in Spain. As I said, we have a state significant project in Andalusia. There's only 7 mining projects that have that classification, but it shows we've got the politicians on side, and certainly it's a project that's very important to the economies of Andalusia and the local towns that surround us. Next slide, please. We have a very mature resource, 19.6 million tonnes in the ground. As you see, 18.5 of those are up in the measured and indicated categories, meaning by the time we finish our feasibility study, all those tonnes are available to be converted to JORC or reserves, which are obviously the tonnes which the bankers will bank and get your project financed. So we've done all the heavy lifting to get a high degree of geological confidence on our resource. Next slide, please. Our last formal study we ran was in 2022 because we were midway through our DFS. But when we did that, 15.5 million tonnes was showing up within our $30,000 pit shell. $30,000 will be the basis of our DFS upcoming. So yeah, that's about a 12.5-year mine life, which is a very good life to be banked. This asset does have more exploration in it, but certainly we have enough to ring fence it and drive through our feasibility studies and get this project approved, into construction and into operations. Next slide, please. For the scale of the project, we have about a 1.25 million tonne mining rate. We put it through the ore sorting technology, which is very mature in the tin industry. That puts about 1 million tonnes through the front of our process plant. That produces about 5,400 tonnes of tin concentrate per year, which is about 3,350 tonnes of contained tin. That is about 1% of the global tin market. Critically for us in this project, it'll be about 100% of Europe's mined tin production. So we play a very strategic and critical role for the EU, which is currently trying to source all its own materials, or at least a portion of its own materials domestically. When we ran the study in 2022, tin price is 32.5. We're substantially above that right now. The economics of that gave us a US NPV of about $220 million and an 8% discount rate, which is about $342 million Australian, which is about 10 times our current market cap. So we certainly think there's some value there for investors to come on board and come on the ride with us. Next slide, please. In terms of all-in sustaining costs, the modelling showed we were quite low on the cost curve, about $19,000 all-in sustaining costs per tonne of tin metal. Next slide, please. So last week we came to the market. We've had about a 10-month board negotiating with the Andalusian authorities on some modifications for our environmental permitting. We announced to the market last week. We're off and running again in Spain, and we've updated our dates. We'll resubmit the changes to our environmental license by Q3 this year. We'll complete our DFS, which is in a highly mature state. Just need to push through the modifications by the end of this calendar year, Q4. We are targeting the receiving of those primary licenses by the end of 2025, with 2 years of construction following that. First targeted production is now the end of 2027. So very much looking forward to pushing through those goals. Next slide, please. Very mature on the technical front. As I said, all the heavy lifting's done, all the high cost work is done. It's in the final stages of revising the DFS. Next slide, please. So onto our Tasmanian project. We currently have the drill rig down there drilling at the moment. We're about 125 metres down. This is an asset that did operate twice during the 19th century and supplied tin to the Australian and the Ally military. Both tin and copper concentrates were produced. We currently still have 7.5 million tonnes at 0.75% tin. We also have 0.3% copper. As I said, this asset has produced both tin and copper historically. We also have a tailings resource there from the historic mining activities. Looks like we can recover a fair bit of tin off those tailings, as well as having at depth and where our current drilling is focused, 4 million tonnes of 0.3% wolframite or tungsten, and a very large exploration target sitting below that. Again, this is absolutely what we're focused on with the current drilling rig. We think in the end this will be a tin copper into tungsten mine with quite a nice mine life. So next slide, please. This is the drill hole that I just mentioned, currently about 100 metres down. We are swinging it in from quite wide, but interestingly, we're drilling from the other side of the hill that we have never, that historically hasn't been drilled for, because that was the location of the old process plant. We are very hopeful to hit some extra tin and copper on the way down, but as you see, that drill hole is targeting the very large blob of tungsten down the bottom there, which is another strategic and critical mineral to many, many economies around the world, predominantly for its military applications. Next slide, please. Very quickly, we've got a very experienced board. I'm fortunate enough that my chairman is also my major shareholder. Andy Gregg worked for Bechtel, the US's largest engineering and construction firm, for 35 years. He ran their metals and mining division for 13 years. And is a big supporter of mining, of minerals, and certainly the critical mineral space. So he's on our register at about 14% shareholding and is very supportive on all aspects to the company. Next slide, please. From the capital point of view, we're currently trading at about a 30 million Australian market cap. Cash, we have about $0.3 million worth of cash. We do have a debt facility with my chairman as well, currently drawn down about $750,000. It's a $2 million facility on friendly terms. So yeah, the company is funded out a little way, which is very good. In addition to that, shareholders, as I said, Andy is our 13.5% shareholder. We have another supportive high net worth and institutions on the register as well. But certainly, we think there's a lot of value moving forward as we mature these two projects. Next slide, please. I think that's me done. That's me done. Happy to take some Q&A, Paul.
Yeah, you powered through there, Joe. Thanks for that. Got a lot of questions that have come through. Let's just kick off. I just want you obviously at that tin conference. I want to get a better feeling what was going on up there. You know, you and I have talked before that tin's been kind of the sleeping giant, forgotten, and suddenly people, for the facts that you put up there, this deficit in 2030 is like a flashing light bulb and needs to be addressed. There's been a lack of investment in new projects. What was the mood up in Malaysia, and do you think that's going to influence projects and approvals for new projects to come online based on that deficit.
Yeah, it's an interesting industry because the major players in the industry are the smelters. The smelters are pretty much the guys who've centralized and pull in all the supply from the world. They've had a history of pretty much being able to maintain their production. But I think you see the fear in their eyes looking forward. You certainly see a big change in the behavior of a number of them from probably 2 years ago, and the market looked a lot more in balance. Two things that have always filled the gap in the tin market have been artisanal supplies out of Southeast Asia. That's just not showing up anymore. The easy stuff has gone. And then other than that, there was 70,000 tons of tin that was sitting on the US strategic reserves at the turn of the millennium. They've sold all that. So basically the Cold War, the US built up this huge supply of tin. They've sold it all, even though it's now back on their critical minerals list, and they're talking about rebuilding up a strategic supply. So the easy sources of tin that used to fill the gap in the market aren't there anymore. So certainly is a spirit of the industry needs to be investing further down upstream to these mining projects. In addition to that, and what I'd like to point out is that 40,000 tons of shortfall into the market is currently their base assumption. One presentation a couple of presentations up there started talking about the sodium-ion batteries. Mm-hmm. So if anyone's familiar with sodium-ion batteries, certainly it looks like it might play a role in future technologies of EVs and everything, a lot cheaper to manufacture. Tin plays a critical role in the anode in those batteries, and some of the numbers of future demand that could come out of that specific one technology was absolutely mind-blowing. So there was talk of an extra 100,000 tons being needed by 2030 just to service the sodium-ion anode market, which currently is not in the ITA's forecast at all. So they're continuously, all these technologies keep showing up, which show tin playing a critical role. So we think demand's only going to go up even from what has been previously modelled.
No. And Joe, the support of the Andalusian government is crucial for the project. How do you foresee this support influencing the next stages of development?
So we went on, our shareholders will be very aware, but other people might not be. We're on about a 10-month pause from when we renegotiated the layouts with the Andalusian authorities. That was because we pre-negotiated what layouts they would expect. It'd be very easy for us to have just said, okay, we'll stop that application and create a new one and let's go and cross our fingers. But through our team there and our lobbyists and our engagement with the authorities, we've effectively pre-agreed a layout that we're very confident will be acceptable to the authorities. So we're very happy with that. The environmental department's happy with that. The mining department is very happy with that, and the politicians are very happy. So we predict a much smoother way forward moving on.
And I think you told us an estimate for the refiling of the primary license submissions in around 6 months. You think there's a chance that could come forward, following the conference in Malaysia?
Does the conference on Malaysia influence the approvals in Andalusia?
Yeah, just the politics that was going on there,
It is possible. I think the major change that's affecting Europe right now is the Critical Raw Materials Act based in the EU has finally become law. So it got approved by Parliament end of last year. It became law a couple of days ago. So I think the drivers, and it's all linked, right? It's seeing governments backing critical minerals projects. So I think what we're really seeing any extra movement and any speed forward of our approvals in Spain is less to do with the industry and more to do with the EU government and the amazing foresight and I guess somewhat pressure they're putting on the member states in the EU to bring forward their approvals of critical minerals projects that are clearly needed.
And let's look forward. Hopefully things get up and running. And where will your concentrate be targeted? Certainly in the early doors, into Europe or as far into US or globally?
Our concentrate?
Yeah.
So the concentrate industry is fairly centralized in Asia. So pretty much you've got the smelting hub in the south of China, which does about 50% of the refined metal. Then you have the Malaysia and Thailand. So really they're the sources for the smelters. Now, I've said publicly before, I said it publicly at the tin market, we are currently looking to smelt within Europe. Now, there's not a solution that presents itself, and certainly one I can talk publicly about yet, but we're working with a number of partners in the area to try to keep our concentrate within Europe. In saying that, we will make the right economic decision for our shareholders, which may be smelting in Europe or may be smelting in Asia. However, there is certainly a very strong political and strategic drivers to try to keep the metal within Europe.
And it's probably just to finish off with just reminding people that's on today that obviously Oropesa is a key project for you. But as you mentioned earlier, Tasmania, you've got some drilling ongoing down there, and maybe some news flow that could be quite significant for the company going forward.
Yeah, we're down to about 145 meters down in Tassie. I can't say too much what we're seeing in the box yet, but let's just say we're pretty encouraged by the drilling thus far. And obviously, as soon as we have something announceable, we're going to put it out there. But yeah, certainly remaining very confident that we may hit some tin copper mineralization before we get down to the big blob of tungsten that we're targeting.
Fantastic. Joe, as always, absolute pleasure. Best of luck, and we'll have you back on in the second half. Thank you.
Thanks, Paul. Appreciate Share Cafe's time.